So we will be solving October-November 2022, question paper 11. Question number 1 says, what is needed to accurately represent all physical quantities? So for any physical quantity, you need two things, a unit and a number. So a base unit and a number, not necessarily. You can have any other SI unit. A unit and a number expressed in the standard form, not necessary. It can be in the standard form. Even if it's not in the standard form, that's okay. A unit and a numerical magnitude, yes, any number, any numerical magnitude. An SI unit and a numerical magnitude, no. Even if it's not an SI unit, that works. Question 2 says a voltmeter across a resistor in a circuit reads 3.6 volts. What could be the current in the resistor and the resistance of the resistor? Now, if you go through the option, you'll realize that they're not testing you on electricity in this particular question. Instead, they are testing you on prefixes. Do you know what M stands for? Do you know what K stands for? Do you know what mu stands for? That is what they're testing. So the formula for voltage is V is equals to IR. You need to multiply current with resistance. For the first one, it's 150 milli multiplied by 0.24 kilo, which is 10 to the power 3. And that gives you 36 volts. For the second one, you do the same thing. And once again, you get 36 volts. For the third one, you get 360 volts. And for the last one, 15 micro and 240 kilo, where micro is 10 to the power minus 6, you get 3.6 volts. So the correct answer, yes, is D, 3.6 volts. Moving on to question number 3. Question 3 says, in an experiment to determine the acceleration of free fall G, the time t taken for a ball to fall through a distance S is measured. The percentage uncertainty in the measurement of S is 2%, and the percentage uncertainty in the measurement of t is 3%. The value of G is determined using the equation G is equals to 2S upon T squared. What is the percentage uncertainty in the calculated value of G? So they've given us the percentage uncertainty for S. They have given us the percentage uncertainty for T, and they're asking you for the percentage uncertainty in G. When two quantities are being multiplied or divided, their percentage errors get added up, not their absolute errors, their percentage errors. And anything that's in the power gets multiplied to that percentage error. So the total percentage error in G is equals to percentage error in S plus 2 times the percentage error in T. Where does the 2 come from? This 2 is basically the power, T squared. And what do we get? We get 2% plus 2 times 3%, which is equals to 8%. So the answer is C, 8%. Just a second. So the answer is 8%. Question 4. Which quantity is a vector? Momentum? Yes, momentum is a vector quantity. So the answer is A. Speed is a scalar quantity. Temperature is a scalar quantity. Young modulus is a scalar quantity. So the only vector quantity amongst these 4 options is option A, which is momentum. Question number 5. Question number 5 says a particle accelerates from rest. The graph shows the variation of the velocity of the particle with time. So what's happening is, let's study the velocity time graph. what I can say is that the velocity of the object increases. And because it's a constant increase, I know that the acceleration is constant. The acceleration is constant irrespective of what that value is, but the velocity continues to increase at that acceleration. The question says which graph shows the variation of the velocity v with the acceleration a of the particle. So let's have a look at option A. If you look at option A, what you'll notice is that the acceleration is increasing, even though we clearly know that the acceleration is constant. So A cannot be the answer. If you look at option B, the acceleration once again is increasing, which is not the option. If you look at option C, the velocity is constant, but the acceleration is increasing, which is not possible. The only possible answer is D. The acceleration is constant at some value, but the velocity continues to increase at that value of acceleration. So 5D. Question number 6 says, the graph shows the vertical velocity of a parachutist during the first 20 seconds of her jump. Approximately how far does she fall before opening the parachute? Now, how do I work it out? Because they're asking for an approximate answer. And when I go through the options, I realize that the options are not close to each other. So taking a rough, the answer to 5 was D. So even taking a rough estimate would give me the correct answer. So what I'll do is I'll say, let's take this value and let's convert this into a triangle here. Even though I know I'll be missing out all of this, when I take the triangle into consideration, I'm just taking this part, but that will give me an approximate answer. And then let's take this value. So this is my second half here. So what I'm actually doing is I'm actually finding out this area, because the question says how far does she fall before opening the parachute? I know this is the point. This is the point where the parachute is deployed. So I can shift it over here. I can do that. I can say, let's take this into consideration, this point. Now, what is this value here? This value here is 11, 12, 13. 13. And this value here is 10. So for the first part, I'll use the formula for a triangle. The formula for the triangle is, can't we just find the area of one big box and count the number of boxes? You can do that. That will also work. Okay, I believe for this particular question that is time consuming. ठीक है, तो आपने क्या करना है? आपने ये करना है कि आपने एरिया अंडर द ग्राफ फाइंड करना है. पहले आपके पास ट्राइंगल है, फिर आपके पास ये ट्रेपीजियम है. सही, आपने यहां तक का एरिया टोटल फाइंड करना था, लेकिन ये मैं फिलहाल स्किप कर रहा हूं. तो दिस बिकम्स हाफ into base into height, which is 60, and this is 300, and this part here, which is a trapezium, is half into, in fact this is a rectangle, not a trapezium, sorry, this is a rectangle, so this is length into breadth, hence 3 into 60. यहां से हमारे पास 3 आ गया, यहां से हमारे पास 60 आ गया, तो ये मेरे पास क्या हो गया? ये मेरे पास 180 हो गया. So I know the sum of the two is 480, but I also know I'm missing out this part here. See? And this part would result in the answer being equal to 570 meters. क्योंकि 710 meters तो बहुत ज्यादा हो जाता है. 710 का मतलब है कि इतना ज्यादा एरिया वापस हो 300. Is this equal to 300? No. If I were to make a rough guess, if this is 180, this will be around 100. Around 100. So 480 plus 100 will give you 580. So 570 आ गया. If you think, no, this does not work for me, I'll rather go with the boxes option, you can go with that method. That would also work. Your call. But that I believe is time consuming. इस क्वेश्चन के अंदर क्योंकि ऑप्शंस के बीच में गैप बहुत ज्यादा है, तो हम ये वाला तरीका यूज कर सकते हैं. Moving on to question number 7. Question 7 says, what is the definition of linear momentum? Momentum की definition क्या है? Momentum is the product of mass and velocity. Momentum is the product of mass and velocity. The answer is C. Sir, if we count the boxes, how do we decide their scale? Acha, going back to question number 6 to explain how to work out the boxes method. अगर आप boxes वाले method से जाते हो तो हम क्या कहेंगे? हम कहेंगे देखो आप एक छोटा बॉक्स ले रहे हो या आप एक बड़ा बॉक्स ले रहे हो. Let's say you take small boxes. You decide कि जी I'll go full crazy. I'll count the number of small boxes and that's how I'll do it. सही. तो हम क्या करेंगे? हम बोलते हैं ये मेरा एक small box है. So this is 1 and this is 2. 20 divided by 5. This is 4. So one small box is equals to 4 meters. See, इस तरीके से हम करेंगे. Then you count the total number of small boxes, approximate. You can do it using that method. Time consuming लेकिन हो जाएगा. सही, उसमें भी आप estimate कर लो. या अगर आप एक big box ले रहे हो तो 20 multiplied by 5, which is 100 meters. तो आप count करो कितने big boxes आ रहे हैं. So I can see एक big box ये रहा, दूसरा ये रहा, तीसरा ये रहा, चौथा ये रहा. This is 4. These are 4 big boxes. Let's take this 5. Approximately 5 हो गया. Let's merge this and this into 6, something like that. और इस तरीके से भी आप कर सकते हो. For the other method, what I did was I basically, they said what is the, how far does she fall before opening the parachute? So I knew this is the point where she opens the parachute. I found out the area under these two. I skipped this part and I said I'll make an approximation for that. This area comes out to be 480. I know ये अगर 130 180 आ रहा है तो ये 100 के करीब होगा. 180 से ज्यादा तो नहीं हो सकता ना. By eye I can see this without any calculation. तो 480 plus 100 कर लेते हैं तो ये 580 हो गया. So what is the closest value to 580? 570. Clear? Acha. For 7, somebody says for the momentum question, why can't it be A? Because force per unit time. Force is change in momentum upon time. So change in momentum is basically force into time. ये तो formula ही गलत है ना. सही, तभी A नहीं हो सकता. Question number 8. Question 8 says a mass of 0.2 kilogram is suspended from the lower end of a light spring. A second mass of 0.1 kilogram is suspended from the first mass by a thread. The arrangement is allowed to come into static equilibrium. So it comes to rest and then this thread is cut. Approximately after immediately after the thread is cut, what is the upward acceleration of the 0.2 kg mass? तो पहले हम initial बात करते हैं. Initially what is happening is initially the downward force, the total downward force is 0.3 multiplied by 9.81. And because this is an equilibrium, I know the upward force will also be equal to 0.3 multiplied by 9.81. तो मेरी डाउनवर्ड फोर्स और मेरी अपवर्ड फोर्स बैलेंस हो गई, सेम हो गई. सही. And that is what the question says. What happens next is, at one instance, I cut down the rope. I cut this thread and I get rid of this second mass that I had. When I get rid of the second mass, I am only left with a downward force of 0.2 multiplied by 9.81. और क्योंकि अभी भी मेरी स्प्रिंग एक्सटेंडेड थी इनिशियली तो उसमें तो उतनी टेंशन होगी 0.3 into 9.81. So the question is, what is the upward acceleration? Resultant force is equals to mass times acceleration. Resultant force is 0.3 into 9.81 minus 0.2 into 9.81. ये आपके पास net force आ गई is equals to mass, which is 0.2, because you only have a 0.2 kilogram mass now, times the acceleration A. You work out the value for acceleration, the value comes out to be 4.9 meters per second. Clear है? हमने क्या किया? इनिशियली दोनों का डाउनवर्ड फोर्स और टेंशन स्प्रिंग की इक्वल कर दी उससे हमारे पास टेंशन आ गई। फिर हमने जब नीचे वाला मास हटा दिया, when we got rid of this mass here, we only had a downward force of 0.2 into 9.81 and used F is equals to ma to find the acceleration. Question 9 says a snowflake tension कैसे निकाली भाई? The question says that it is in equilibrium, so the downward force will be equal to the upward force. Downward force क्या है? इन दोनों का वेट है ना 0.3 mass multiplied by gmg, तो upward force भी क्या होगा? इन दोनों का वेट होगा 0.3 multiplied by 9.81. क्लियर है? A snowflake and a raindrop are in still air. They both fall from rest at the same time and from the same height far above the ground. तो दोनों नीचे गिर रहे हैं in the presence of air. दोनों पे air resistance act करेगी. The snowflake and the raindrop contain the same mass of water. तो दोनों का weight same है. Assume that there is no evaporation or melting. Also assume that for a given speed, the drag force acting on the snowflake is greater than the drag force acting on the raindrop. ठीक है, तो snowflake पे drag force ज़्यादा होगी और raindrop पे drag force कम होगी. Which statement about the snowflake and the raindrop is correct? Now, for this, you need to understand, let's say this is our snowflake and this here is our raindrop. क्योंकि snowflake पे drag force ज़्यादा है as opposed to the drag force on raindrop at any given speed, हमें पता है snowflake जल्दी terminal velocity पे पहुंच जाएगा, और जल्दी terminal velocity पे पहुंचेगा तो उसका ये भी मतलब है कि वो छोटी वैल्यू पे पहुंचेगा. ठीक है, it will have a lower terminal velocity. The raindrop takes more time to reach terminal velocity. Yes. The snowflake takes less time. The raindrop takes more time. The raindrop takes some more time than the snowflake to reach the ground. No. ठीक है, weight दोनों का same है. Yes. Hamad, you're right. Weight is same for both. They reach the same terminal velocity. No. They take the same amount of time to reach the ground. No. Because the snowflake reaches terminal velocity first, it will have a lower terminal velocity. Hence, it will take more time to reach the ground. Question number 10 says, two trolleys are held together on a horizontal surface with a compressed spring between them. When they are released, the trolleys lose contact with the spring. The trolley of mass 2 kilogram moves to the left at a speed of 2 meters per second. How much elastic potential energy was stored in the spring? Before we move on to elastic potential energy, I want you to tell me what is the speed of the 1 kilogram mass. अगर 2 किलोग्राम मास 2 की स्पीड से जा रहा है तो 1 किलोग्राम मास किस स्पीड से ट्रैवल करेगा टू द राइट? नो, नॉट 1, 4 meters per second. Perfect. And if you were to ask why is it 4 meters per second, the simple reason behind that is कि भाई momentum is conserved. अगर इनिशियल मोमेंटम 0 है तो फाइनल मोमेंटम भी क्या होगा? 0 होगा. अगर इसका लेफ्ट की तरफ 4 है तो इसका क्या होना चाहिए? राइट की तरफ 4 होना चाहिए ना, तभी तो वो बैलेंस होंगे दोनों. So now I have their speeds. I need to find out the elastic potential energy in the spring. What I'll do is I'll find out the kinetic energy of the two. I'll say half into 2 into 2 squared plus half into 1 into 4 squared. Kinetic energy of the larger trolley plus kinetic energy of the smaller trolley. And that gives me the total kinetic energy. And this is equals to 4 plus 8, which is equals to 12 joules. So 12 joules is the total kinetic energy, and that is also the elastic potential energy. So to find out the 1 kilogram wali speed, can the formula m1 u1 plus m2 u2, that is exactly what I'm using now. Okay, that is exactly what I'm using. I'm using initial momentum is equals to final momentum. ठीक है, मुझे पता है इनका combined initial momentum कितना है? 0 है. तो फाइनल भी कितना होना चाहिए? 0 होना चाहिए. सही. तो I can say 0 is equals to 2 into 2 plus 1 into x. तो x इज इक्वल्स टू -4। माइनस का मतलब है कि ये इससे ऑपोजिट डायरेक्शन में जाएगा। तो दैट इज एग्जैक्टली व्हाट वी हैव डन। तो इससे हमारे पास 4 की वैल्यू आ गई कि इसकी स्पीड 4 मीटर्स पर सेकेंड है। उसके बाद हमने कहा जो इनिशियल काइनेटिक एनर्जी है जो कि 0 है, तो हमारी फाइनल काइनेटिक एनर्जी भी कितनी होगी? हमारी फाइनल काइनेटिक एनर्जी भी 0 होगी। सॉरी, इनिशियल मोमेंटम 0 है तो फाइनल मोमेंटम 0 होगा। फाइनल काइनेटिक एनर्जी 12 जूल्स है तो एनर्जी स्टोर्ड इन द स्प्रिंग विल आल्सो बी 12 जूल। ओके, question number 12 says a square board of side of length x hangs freely from a nail p as shown. You cannot do that, Sarah, you don't have the values. The board has a uniform thickness and is made from a material of uniform density. A second square board of side 2x is made from the same material and has the same thickness as the original board. The second board is then hung from a nail q. Nails p and q are at the same height. What is the vertical distance between the positions of center of gravity of the two boards? Now, because this is a uniform board, it has a uniform thickness, I know the center of gravity would lie at the geometric center here. And for this one also, it lies over here at the geometric center. तो हमें ये distance find करना है. But for that, I need to find out this total distance. This is the diagonal. I'll use Pythagoras theorem because it's a square right angle triangle hai. More of a mathematical question than a physics question. Agreed. So for this, the diagonal will be, let's say this total length is L. So hypotenuse squared is equals to x squared plus x squared. Hypotenuse is equals to under root 2x. So this one here is under root 2x. This total thing is under root 2x. तो if somebody says कि ये ऊपर से लेके नीचे तक का डिस्टेंस कितना है, पॉइंट P से लेके सेंटर ऑफ ग्रेविटी तक का डिस्टेंस कितना है, so my answer to that will be under root 2 over 2x. इसका हाफ हो जाएगा ना टोटल लेंथ का. इसी तरीके से I'll do this for the second one. h squared is equals to 2x squared plus 2x squared. So h is equals to 2 root 2x. You do this in your calculator, skip the x, you get 2 root 2. So 2 root 2x. मतलब ये जो पूरी लेंथ हमारे पास है, this entire length is 2 root 2x. And if somebody says कि जी यहां से लेके यहां तक का डिस्टेंस कितना है, my answer to that will be my answer to that will be 2 root 2 divided by 2. Now the question says कि इन दोनों के सेंटर ऑफ ग्रेविटी के बीच में ये डिस्टेंस कितना है? What is this distance? तो हम क्या करेंगे? हम इसको हाफ कर देंगे, सॉरी सबट्रैक्ट कर देंगे. सो 2 root 2 अपॉन 2x माइनस root 2 upon 2x, 2 root 2 upon 2x minus root 2 upon 2x, 2 root 2 upon 2x minus root 2 upon 2, and that basically gives you root 2x over root 2. So the answer is B. Is this clear? The only part that was linked to physics was the part where you needed to know कि जी आपकी center of gravity जो है वो geometric center में होगी. ठीक है, तो हमने क्या किया? हमने पाइथागोरस थ्योरम से ये डायगोनल निकाल लिया. हमने पाइथागोरस थ्योरम से ये डायगोनल निकाल लिया, उनको हाफ किया तो हमें ये टॉप पॉइंट से लेके यहाँ तक का डिस्टेंस आ गया. सिमिलरली टॉप पॉइंट से लेके यहाँ तक का डिस्टेंस आ गया, which will be root 2 upon 2 and 2 root 2 upon 2. And then what we did was subtract the 2 and that gives you x upon root 2. अगर आप कैलकुलेटर में करते हो तो कैलकुलेटर में x upon root 2 नहीं आता, आपके पास कैलकुलेटर में root 2 upon 2x आता है. सही, which is basically the same thing. Moving on. Why did we subtract them? Because the question says, what is the vertical distance between the positions of the center of gravity? What is the vertical distance between the positions of the center of gravity? ये distance चाहिए. How do I get this distance? This entire thing minus this thing. Let's move on to the next part. Forces are applied to a rigid object. The forces all act in the same plane. In which diagram is the object in equilibrium? There are two conditions to equilibrium. The first condition is that the net force should be 0 and the net moment should be 0. Net force 0 की बात करें तो downward force should be equal to upward force. Not happening in this one and happening in the others. The other thing is the clockwise moment should be equal to the anti-clockwise moment. So I know ये half f इसको ऐसे घुमाएगा, ये half f इसको ऐसे घुमाएगा. And this f will not rotate it because it's through the center. So this is the one in which the net moment is 0. On the contrary, for this one, these two will not cause rotation. This will make it go in this direction. This will make it go in this direction. Hence, it will rotate anti-clockwise. For the last one, this and this cancels out in terms of rotation, but these two forces make it go in this direction. Why not B? B के लिए देखो आप center में pivot ले लो, ठीक है? Assume that the pivot is at the center. This makes it go in the anti-clockwise direction. This also makes it go in the anti-clockwise direction. Torque की definition क्या है? One of the force multiplied by the perpendicular distance between the two forces. अच्छा. Let's have a look at option D again. So the trick here is you take one of the parts, one point as a pivot. ठीक है, आप किसी भी एक पॉइंट को पिवट ले लो. So this is our pivot. This will make it go in the clockwise direction. This will make it go in the anti-clockwise direction. क्योंकि दोनों forces same है. This one has a greater distance. So this one will have a greater moment. The other has a smaller distance, तो उसका moment कम होगा, तो वो cancel out नहीं हो रहे होंगे. They will not cancel out. Question number 13 says, a rigid rod XY has a negligible mass and a length 75 centimeters. The rod is suspended from a fixed point P by a string attached to end X. An object of mass 11 kg is suspended by a string that is attached to the rod at a distance of 25 centimeters from end X. Just a second, just give me a minute. Okay. So again, a rigid rod XY has a negligible mass and length 75 centimeters. The rod is suspended from a fixed point P by a string attached to end X. An object of mass 11 kg is suspended by a string that is attached to the rod at a distance of 25 centimeters from end X as shown. Which vertically upward force acting on end Y of the rod would hold the rod horizontally in equilibrium? तो वो कह रहे हैं कि हम end Y पर upward से एक force लगाना चाह रहे हैं. ये force कितनी होनी चाहिए? ये force इतनी होनी चाहिए कि ये इसको balance कर. ठीक है, ये फोर्स कितनी होगी? लेट्स फर्स्ट कन्वर्ट दिस इनटू force 2. So 11 multiplied by 9.81, and that gives me 11 into 9.81, and that gives me 107.91 newtons. Now I know for this to be in equilibrium, the clockwise moment should be equal to the anti-clockwise moment. So 107.9 multiplied by 25 should be equal to F multiplied by 75. What is the answer? Into 25 divided by 75. So the answer is F is equals to 36 newtons. The force F is equals to 36 newtons. C. Yes, perfect. Okay, simple moments. Clockwise is equals to anti-clockwise. The only mistake they expect you to make is you forget to convert this 11 kilogram into force, into weight, and you'll get an incorrect answer. You'll get a value of around 3.7 newtons. Question 14 says the density of water is 1 grams per centimeter cube and the density of glycerine is 1.3 grams per centimeter cube. Water is added to a measuring cylinder containing 40 centimeter cube of glycerine, and the density of the mixture is 1.1 grams per centimeter cube. Assuming that the mixing process does not change the total volume of the liquid, what is the volume of the water added? So this is what we know. We know there is glycerine. Glycerine has a density of 1.3 grams per centimeter cube, and the volume is 40 centimeter cube. So density, volume. We don't know the mass, but we can calculate the mass. The mass of glycerine will be 1.3 multiplied by 40, 52 grams. As far as water is concerned, water has a density of 1 grams per centimeter cube. The volume of water is unknown, so let's call this V. Let's keep it V. Volume is V. And the mass is 1 multiplied by V, which is 1V. So we have the mass, we have the volume. And what we also know is that the total density of the mixture, the total density is 1.1 grams per centimeter cube. Now the question is, what is the volume of water? The only way to solve this is you use the formula for density, which is total mass divided by total volume. Total mass is 52 plus V. Total volume is 40. This is 40 centimeter cube, plus V centimeter cube, plus V. And that gives you the total density as 1.1. You cross multiply. 52 plus V is equals to 44 plus 1.1 V. And that gives you V is equals to 80 centimeter cube. Is this clear? 52 minus 44 divided by 0.1. ठीक है, जब भी टोटल डेंसिटी का सवाल है आप एक ही तरीके से कर सकते हो, एंड दैट मेथड इज टोटल mass upon total volume. How is the mass 1V? I'll tell you how the mass is 1V. Mass का फॉर्मूला क्या होता है? Mass का फॉर्मूला होता है डेंसिटी इनटू वॉल्यूम. वाटर की डेंसिटी कितनी है? 1. वाटर का वॉल्यूम हमने क्या अज्यूम किया है? V. तो वाटर का मास क्या आ गया? 1V आ गया या V आ गया? सेम थिंग. Mahad, is this clear? Question 15. Now, this was a good question. A box in the shape of a cube falls from a ship into the sea. The box lands with its lower face level with the surface of the sea. The box begins to sink, becomes totally submerged, and then sinks deeper into the sea. So this is our box. Let's say this is our box. And this box is at the surface of the sea first. Initially, it sinks inside, gets completely submerged, and then continues to sink further and further down. Which graph best represents the variation of the upthrust acting on the box with the depth of its lower face below the surface of the sea? So my question to you is, this is the lower surface of the box. When the lower surface is outside the water, okay, at the top of the surface of the water, what will be the upthrust on this box initially when it's outside? 0? Yes. Because it's not inside the water, it will experience no upthrust. What happens next is, as it moves inside, तो हमारा graph 0 से start होना चाहिए. First thing is कि भाई graph should start from 0. So it can be A, it can be C, and it can be D. B is not possible. Then what happens is, as it sinks inside, the upthrust increases. But once it is inside the water, what happens? The upthrust does not increase because it's completely submerged. Upthrust का formula क्या है? Upthrust का formula है rho GV. Rho क्या है? Density. G क्या है? 9.81. V क्या है? Volume. सही, वॉल्यूम सारा का सारा अंदर है, ना डेंसिटी चेंज हो रही है, ना जी की वैल्यू चेंज हो रही है. तो शुरू में अपथ्रस्ट इंक्रीज होगा, उसके बाद वो क्या हो जाएगा? कांस्टेंट हो जाएगा. सो द आंसर इज सी. इट initially increases. As soon as it gets completely submerged, it becomes constant. Why not D? देखो D आपको ये बता रहा है, डी आपको ये बता रहा है कि जी अपथ्रस्ट जो है वो लिनियरली चेंज नहीं हो रहा, जबकि हमें पता है कि जी अपथ्रस्ट का फॉर्मूला क्या है? अपथ्रस्ट इज प्रेशर इनटू एरिया, रो जी एच मल्टीप्लाइड बाय एरिया. ठीक है, रो जी एच मल्टीप्लाइड बाय एरिया. तो रो इज कांस्टेंट, जी इज कांस्टेंट, एरिया इज कांस्टेंट. अपथ्रस्ट इज डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल टू हाइट और अपथ्रस्ट इज डायरेक्टली प्रोपोर्शनल टू डेप्थ. That is why initially it should be directly proportional. It should be a straight line graph. How would the graph differ had it been a sphere instead? Would graph D be the answer then? For a sphere, what happens is कि जी आपका वॉल्यूम जो है linearly नहीं बढ़ता. शुरू में स्लो बढ़ेगा, फिर उसके बाद वो वापस स्लो होगा. तो स्फेयर के लिए थोड़ा कंफ्यूजिंग हो जाएगा. They may never ask you that question. Moving on. Question number 16 says, a spring is compressed by a mass as shown. Which statement describes the changes to the energy of the spring when it is compressed by the mass? So the spring gains both gravitational potential energy and elastic. No, it loses gravitational potential energy. It gains elastic potential energy. GPE कम होगी, elastic potential बढ़ेगी क्योंकि compress हो रहा है spring. The spring gains gravitational? No. The spring loses gravitational potential energy and elastic potential energy? No. The spring loses gravitational potential energy, bilkul, and gains elastic potential energy. That is absolutely right. Question number 17 says, a man of mass potential energy increases for both extension and compression. बिल्कुल. अगर आपके पास एक स्प्रिंग है अपने नेचुरल स्टेट के अंदर, आप उसको कंप्रेस करोगे तो भी इलास्टिक पोटेंशियल एनर्जी बढ़ेगी, आप उसको एक्सटेंड करोगी तो भी इलास्टिक पोटेंशियल एनर्जी बढ़ेगी. सर तो इनिशियल एनर्जी क्या है? इनिशियल ग्रेविटेशनल पोटेंशियल एनर्जी है, वो कम होगी और इलास्टिक पोटेंशियल एनर्जी बढ़ेगी. Question number 17 says, a man of mass 75 kilogram runs up a staircase consisting of 30 steps. Each step is 20 centimeters high. The man takes the time of 7 seconds to run from the bottom of the staircase to the top. What is the average rate of increase of gravitational potential energy of the man? Yes, Alicia. So they're asking for the rate of increase of gravitational potential energy. They're actually asking you for the power. Power is energy upon time. Power is mgh upon time. The mass of the person is 75. The value for G is 9.81. The height of each step is 0.2 meters, 20 centimeters, 0.2 meters. But how many steps do we have? We have 30 steps. You take that 30 into consideration, divided by the total time, which is 7 seconds. And that gives you the answer as C, 630 watts. 630 watts is the answer. Question number 18 says an alpha particle has a 2.2 into 10 to the power minus 13 joules of kinetic energy. What is the speed of the alpha particle? So the formula for kinetic energy is half mv squared. Can somebody tell me the mass of an alpha particle? What is the mass of an alpha particle? 2.2 into 10 to the power minus 13 is equals to half. Pius says the mass of an alpha particle is 4u, where u has a value of 1.66 into 10 to the power minus 27 kilograms, which is given. So 4 into 1.66 into 10 to the power minus 27 into v squared. That's it. So they were testing whether you knew what the mass of an alpha particle was. Because apart from that, there's nothing complicated. And that gives you the value as, don't forget to square root, the value as 8.1 into 10 to the power minus 6 meters per second. So do they tell the mass in the first page? From where did you get the mass? देखो mass नहीं बताते, वो आपको u की value बताते हैं, where u is unified atomic mass. And you know alpha particle has 2 protons and 2 neutrons. और एक प्रोटॉन का मास भी u होता है, न्यूट्रॉन का मास भी u होता है. तो टोटल मास क्या हो गया? 4u हो गया. और u की वैल्यू that is given on the first page. Identical springs are joined in 4 arrangements. Which arrangement has the same spring constant as a single spring? So let's say each spring has a spring constant of K. The answer to the previous one was C. Each spring has a spring constant of K. When you connect two spring constants in series, what happens to the spring constants? क्योंकि ये identical हैं, ये half हो जाएंगे. So K upon 2. And you can work this out using the formula 1 upon K plus 1 upon K inverse. You get the same answer, K upon 2. These two are in parallel, K plus K, which is equals to 2K. For C, these two are in series, but they're in parallel. So C says, for C, these two are K upon 2, these two are K upon 2. The total is K upon 2 plus K upon 2, which is equals to K. So in this case, what's happening is the combined spring constant is equal to the spring constant of 1. This would not happen for any other. You can work those out. Question number 20. Question 20 says an unstretched length, a spring has a length of 2 centimeters. Answer is C. Yes, the answer is C. Answer is C. An unstretched length has a spring has a length of 2 centimeters The spring is then stretched within its limit of proportionality by a tensile force of 1.5 newtons so that the elastic potential energy stored in the spring is 0.045 joules. What is the stretch length of the spring? So half F x is equals to 0.045. Half into force, which is 1.5, multiplied by extension, which is x is equals to 0.045. And the value for x that we get is 0.06 meters. तो अब क्या हो गया? अब हमारे पास extension आ गई, which is 0.06 meters, which is equals to 6 centimeters. 6 centimeters. Now, most students, when they're attempting the paper, they're already in a hurry. Okay? Like Mason just said that the answer is C. See? But the answer is not C. The reason behind that is they're not asking you for the extension. They are instead asking you for the new stretch length of the spring. तो आप कहोगे जी C तो 6 सेंटीमीटर तो एक्सटेंशन है ना मेरी, तो ये हो गया 6 + 2 which is equals to 8 centimeters. अच्छा, पिछले वाले का पूछा था, सॉरी, माय बैड. आई थॉट यू आर गिविंग मी द आंसर टू दिस वन, बट आई बेट इन द एग्जामिनेशन this happens a lot. This is natural. You're in a hurry, you miss stuff out. Okay, have a look at this question. Moving on. To the next question. A signal generator, amplifier, and a loudspeaker are used to produce different sound waves in the air of a room. The relationship between the properties of these waves are investigated. Amplitude is proportional to wavelength. Which relationship is not correct? Amplitude proportional to wavelength? No, that is incorrect. Frequency is inversely proportional to wavelength. We know that F is equals to V upon lambda. F is inversely proportional to lambda. Intensity is proportional to amplitude squared. I is proportional to A squared. That is absolutely right. Time period is reciprocal of frequency. Yes, time period is 1 upon frequency. So all three of these options are correct. Relationship A is incorrect. Moving on to question number 22. When a guitar string is plugged, it causes a longitudinal sound wave in the air. The speed of sound in air is 340 meters per second. What is the approximate frequency of the sound wave shown? तो frequency के लिए पहले हमें यहाँ से wavelength identify करनी है. Wavelength identify करने के लिए same points find करने पड़ेंगे, as in from one compression to the next compression, from one rarefaction to the next rarefaction. So if you take this as your starting point, which is the center of this compression, I know the center of the next compression lies somewhere over here, somewhere here, 0.5. Okay? Not, it may not exactly be 0.5 meters, but approximate 0.5 meters. Now, F is equals to V upon lambda, 340 divided by 0.5, which gives you 680 hertz. So this point here, this distance here, for those of you who are still confused, is one wavelength. Question number 23 says, now this is a confusing one because you need to visualize the wave traveling. Question number 23 says a transverse wave travels along a rope. The diagram shows the rope at t is equals to 0. The wave is traveling from left to right. The period of the wave is capital T. One particle of the rope is labeled x. Which graph shows the variation with time t of the displacement of the particle x between t is equals to 0 and t is equals to 2t? How does the displacement vary? Now, this is what we will do. Let me trace the wave. And I want you to understand that the particle x that you have will only move up and down. Energy moves to the right because that is the direction of the wave, but the particle moves to the particles move perpendicular, hence up and down. So what happens is initially the particle is at mean position. तो हमारी स्टार्टिंग कहाँ से होगी? हमारी स्टार्टिंग तो मीन पोजीशन से होगी. इट हैज टू बी ए और बी. सी और डी तो गलत हो जाते हैं. इनकरेक्ट. They do not start from the mean position. Moving on, as the wave moves to the right, so I'm moving the wave to the right. What do I notice? I notice जो particle x है अब वो इस position पे होगा. Obviously, it has to be on the wave at all points, at all times. So it is on this point, at this position, which means that the particle has moved down. So initially my particle moves down and it first comes to the trough. पहले trough आएगा. And then as the wave moves forward, when it reaches this point, it then moves to the crest. Why down? That is exactly what I explained. Let me go over this again. So this is my wave. As my wave moves to the right, particle x at all points stay on the wave. ठीक है? तो मैं wave को थोड़ा right पे move करता हूँ and then I'll position particle x on the wave. So my wave moves to the right. And this particle x, which was initially over here, is now here. Where has the particle moved? The particle has moved downwards. तो मेरे particle जो है initially mean position पे होगा, वक्त के साथ साथ पहले वो down जाएगा, trough पे पहुंचेगा, and this B. That is the answer. A is incorrect. Question 24 says a jet aircraft travels at a speed of 0.8 v, where v is the speed of sound. The aircraft directly approaches the stationary observer. The frequency of sound emitted by the aircraft is 100 hertz. Which frequency does the observer hear? So a question on Doppler effect, a straightforward question. Observed frequency is equal to v upon v minus vs. Because it's approaching में negative sign लगती है. Moving away, receding, positive sign लगती है. Fs. The speed of the sound is v minus 0.8 v multiplied by 100. V upon 0.2 v multiplied by 100. The v's cancel out. 500 hertz is the observed frequency. The observed frequency is 500 hertz. Clear? Question number 25 says, a telescope detects and analyzes some electromagnetic radiation of wavelength 2 centimeters. So the wavelength that is analyzed is 2 centimeters. Which type of telescope is it? A microwave telescope. A microwave telescope, microwaves have a wavelength of typically 10 to the power minus 2 centimeters, approximately. So yes, it is a microwave telescope because this is centimeters, this is 10 to the power minus 2 meters. Optical telescopes detect visible light. Visible lights have a wavelength of around 10 to the power minus 6 meters. Radio telescope, around 1000 meters, 10 to the power 3 meters. X-ray telescope, X-rays have this have a very short wavelength, 10 to the power minus 10 meters. So the answer is microwave telescope because microwaves are 10 to the power minus 2 meters, which lies in the centimeter range. You'll have to remember the wavelengths and or the frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum. two waves of the same type overlap, when does the principle of superposition apply? Always. Let's see. Only when the waves have the same amplitude. No, even if they don't have the same amplitude, there'll still be superposition. You'll still get a resultant wave. So incorrect. Only when they have the same frequency. No, even if they don't have the same frequency, if they're meeting, you'll still have some resultant wave, and that is what superposition is. No, only when the waves travel in opposite direction. No, so always. Even if they're traveling like this, at some angle to each other, the points where they meet, you'll still get superposition. That is exactly what happens in a double slit experiment. That is exactly what happens in a diffraction grating. Question 27 says, a stationary sound wave is formed in a tube of length L that is closed at one end. The diagram shows the positions of the nodes and the antinodes of the stationary wave. Which graph shows the variation of the amplitude A of the wave with distance x measured from the closed end of the tube? Closed end of the tube. तो क्लोज्ड एंड पे हमारे पास शुरू में क्या है? शुरू में नोड है. शुरू में नोड होने का मतलब है कि आपके पास स्टार्टिंग एम्पलीट्यूड क्या होगा? 0 होगा, फिर मैक्सिमम होगा, फिर 0 होगा, फिर मैक्सिमम होगा. has to end at a maximum amplitude. That eliminates C and D. क्योंकि देखो नोड कितनी दफा आ रहा है? एक और दो दफा. तो 0 कितनी दफा होगा? 2 दफा होगा. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 zero amplitude at 4 instances. यहाँ पर भी 4 दफा 0 amplitude है. This is not possible. So either A or B. Now they are asking you for amplitude. ठीक है? Amplitude is always positive. It's not negative. Displacement होता तो हम positive negative कर रहे होते. So the answer is A. Amplitude 0, maximum amplitude, amplitude 0 here, and then maximum amplitude here, maximum. Question number 28 says, a wave on the surface of a water passes through a gap between two barriers and is diffracted as shown. What happens when the frequency of wave is halved? So for that, we need to have a closer look at this diagram. This is my barrier here, and this is my wavelength. What can you say about the gap inside this barrier, and what can you say about the wavelength? How do the two compare? Are they similar to each other? Is the gap in the barrier larger than the wavelength, or is the wavelength larger than the gap in the barrier? So there is more gap. Okay, the gap is larger. In fact, if I were to rotate it, and I can do that, if I were to rotate it and place it right next to this, I can see it's almost double. The gap is double, twice. Let's duplicate it. In fact, it's a bit more than twice, but the gap is more than the wavelength. When do you have maximum diffraction? You have maximum diffraction when the gap or the slit is close to the wavelength. If they're equal, maximum diffraction. As long as they're close, maximum diffraction. So what happens when the frequency of the wave is halved? You halve the frequency, the wavelength becomes double. Wavelength becomes double. That means that the wavelength becomes equal to the barrier, the gap in the barrier. So there is more diffraction observed. आपकी wavelength और आपका gap जो है वो ज्यादा करीब करीब हो जाएंगे, तो diffraction क्या होगी? Diffraction बढ़ जाएगी. Question number 29 says, observable interference fringes are produced using light from a double slit. The intensity of the light emerging from each slit is initially same. So you have a double slit. and you are observing interference fringes from this double slit. Initially, the intensity is same. When the intensity is same, I know that initially the amplitude is same. Same amplitude. Same amplitude. Sorry for that. So initially they have the same intensity, they have the same amplitude. The intensity of light emerging from one of the slits is now reduced. अब पहले हम समझते हैं कि हो क्या रहे हैं. हो क्या रहा है कि पहले आपके पास यहाँ पर 4 था एम्पलीट्यूड और यहाँ पर भी एम्पलीट्यूड क्या था 4. So initially they have the same amplitude and let's say the amplitude was 4. So when you talk about the bright fringe पे क्या होता है, crest से meet करता है. तो ये 4 और दूसरा 4 meet करके क्या बना देगा, 8 बना देगा. और डार्क के ऊपर क्या होता है, crest trough से meet करता है. So 4 minus 4 gives you 0. Now if you were to decrease the intensity from one of the slits, so let's say इस 4 को हमने change करके 3 कर दिया. जब ये 3 हो जाएगा तो जहां पर कंस्ट्रक्टिव हो रही थी वहां पर ऐड होके वो 7 हो जाएंगे. तो जो ब्राइट फ्रिंज है उनका एम्पलीट्यूड कम हो गया है ना, तो वो लेस ब्राइट हो जाएंगे. द ब्राइट फ्रिंजेस आर लेस ब्राइट, दे आर डार्कर. सो द ब्राइट फ्रिंजेस बिकम डार्कर. सही. एंड जहां पर कैंसिल हो रहे थे, पहले 4 और -4 0 बना रहा था, अब 4 और -3 1 बनाएगा, तो दे आर नॉट एज डार्क, दे बिकम अ बिट ब्राइटर. थोड़े ब्राइट हो जाएंगे. सो द डार्क फ्रिंज बिकम्स ब्राइटर. द आंसर इज डी. Clear? Dark becomes brighter, bright becomes darker. Question number 30 says a diffraction grating of 4 into 10 to the power 5 lines per meter. This is the value for n. A beam of light of wavelength 589 into 10 to the power minus 9 meters incident normally on the diffraction grating. What is the angle between the second order maximum and the incident and the direction of the incident beam of the light? So they're simply asking you for the second order maximum from the zero order. The formula is d sine theta is equals to n lambda. D is 1 upon 4 into 10 to the power 5 sine theta is equals to second order n is 2. Wavelength is 589 into 10 to the power minus 9. And that gives you the value for theta as 28.11, hence 28.1 degrees. Any questions up till this point? If you have questions in the previous part, I'll answer those at the end. Any confusion in question 30? No. 31. A length of wire RS has a circular cross section. At end R of the wire, the cross sectional area is A. At end S of the wire, the cross sectional area is A upon 2. Charge Q takes time to pass through the end R of the wire. So from end R, charge Q takes a time T. I know because this is in series. The current passing through it would be same. There is a constant electric current in the wire and it will have the same current. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि यहाँ पर ज्यादा करंट होगा, यहाँ पे कम करंट होगा, क्योंकि ये सीरीज के अंदर है ना. तो दूसरी साइड पर भी मुझे पता है कि टाइम टी के अंदर कितना चार्ज पास करेगा, क्यू ही पास करेगा, बिकॉज इट हैज द सेम करंट. तो हाफ टाइम के अंदर हाफ चार्ज पास करेगा. in quarter of a time, the charge will also be quarter, Q upon 4. The basic principles being same current because they are in series, it's connected in series, there is no other path. Same charge in the same time, half charge in half time, quarter charge in quarter time. Question number 32 says a power supply is connected to a component by connecting wires of एरिया से कोई चेंज नहीं आएगा, नहीं, एरिया से ड्रिफ्ट स्पीड चेंज हो जाएगी, लेकिन करंट में कोई चेंज नहीं आएगा. सही, लेकिन वो ड्रिफ्ट स्पीड का पूछ नहीं रहे ना. I is equals to ANVQ. एरिया कम करने से ड्रिफ्ट स्पीड बढ़ जाती है, but charge flowing per unit time stays the same because that is current. A power supply is connected to a component by connecting wires of the total resistance 4.9 ohms. The power supply has an output power of 3.6 watts and a terminal potential difference of 12 volts. So there is a power supply and it is connected to a component, some component, and the wires have a total resistance of 4.9 ohms. The terminal potential difference is 12 volts, which means that the battery in this case provides 12 volts. How much thermal energy is dissipated in the connecting wires in a time of 1 hour? Now the problem is I can't just use 12 volts for the wires. I can't say कि in wires को 12 volts मिलेगा. The reason behind that is there is also another component present. So the wire and these components combined get a total of 12 volts. In सबको मिलके 12 volts मिलता है. So what do I do first? Let me find out the current. I know the power. I know the voltage. I can easily find out the current. I can say power is equals to VI. I is equals to power 3.6 multiplied by 12. And that gives you 0.3 amperes. Which means that 0.3 amperes travels through these wires, through this component and back. Now to find out the energy dissipated, I will use energy is equals to I squared RT. Energy is equals to 0.3 squared times the resistance of the wire, which is 4.9 multiplied by 3600 seconds in an hour. And that gives me 1.6 kilojoules. The mistake students tend to make in this question is they'll simply use V squared upon R instead of I squared R. The problem with V squared upon R is you can't use 12 volts here. 12 volts is for the wires and for this electrical component. So you'll have to use I squared R. और the other option is कि आप current की value निकाल ली है, resistance पता है, आप इसका voltage find करो using V is equals to IR. Moving on to question number 33. Question 33 says a copper wire is to be replaced by an aluminum alloy wire of the same length and resistance. Copper has half the resistivity of the alloy. What is the ratio of the diameter of the alloy wire to the diameter of the copper wire? So R is equals to rho L upon A. A is equals to R rho upon, A is equals to rho L upon R. I know for both the wires, they have the same length. So length is a constant. They have the same, this is R, this is R. They have the same resistance. So R is a constant. I know that their area is directly proportional to resistance. And because area is pi d squared upon 4, I can say pi d squared upon 4 is directly proportional to resistance. And since pi is a constant, 4 is a constant, d squared is directly proportional to resistivity, not resistance, resistivity. Now, what do they want us from us? They want us to find the diameter of the copper upon diameter of the alloy. So diameter is proportional to under root of resistivity. So diameter of copper upon diameter of alloy means resistivity, under root resistivity of copper upon resistivity of alloy. What have they told us about the resistivity? Copper has half the resistivity of the alloy. So let's say copper has a resistivity of rho. Alloy will have a resistivity of 2 rho. 2 rho. And this is alloy over copper, not copper over alloy. Alloy and copper. Alloy, copper. Which means under root 2 rho upon rho. The rho cancels out, under root 2. That is the ratio of the answer. That is the ratio of the diameter of the alloy wire to the diameter of the copper wire. So the thing is, if you have practiced enough, you won't have to go through this entire thing, break it down, write down each step. Just writing down this formula here should give you that d squared is proportional to rho and d is proportional to under root rho. That's it. You don't need to work this entire thing out. So it's not as time consuming as you think it is, given that you have sufficient practice. Moving on to question number 34. 3 identical filament lamp P, Q, and R are connected to a battery of negligible internal resistance. The filament wire in lamp Q breaks so that it no longer conducts. What are the changes in the brightness of the lamp P and R? So how do we figure this out? Let's say the resistance of this is, each lamp is 10. So this is 10, this is 10, this is 10. Now, because this is 10, these two combined will have a total resistance of 5 ohms. ठीक है, initially ये हो रहा था. सही, the answer to 33 is A. Initially ये हो रहा था कि total resistance कितनी थी? Total resistance आपके पास 5 ohms थी और इसकी कितनी थी? 10 ohms थी. Which means कि अगर आपके पास 15 volts का बल्ब, 15 volts की बैटरी है ना, तो इस 15 volts की बैटरी में से 10 volts इसको मिलेगा और 5 volts इसको मिलेगा. सही, तो initially 10 and 5 का ratio था. But what happens next is that this one breaks. When this one breaks, you have these two bulbs, each having 10 ohms. So what happens is this 15 volts now gets divided equally, and this one gets 7.5 volts, this one gets 7.5 volts. Both get equal voltages. तो इस वाले बल्ब के लिए 5 था, 7.5 हो गया, तो लैम्प P क्या हो जाएगा? ब्राइटर हो गया. लैम्प Q ऑन दी अदर हैंड, पहले उसको 10 वोल्ट्स मिल रहे थे, अब कितने मिल रहे हैं? 7.5 वोल्ट्स मिल गए. वो क्या हो जाएगा? डिमर हो जाएगा. So the answer is B. Lamp P becomes brighter, R becomes dimmer. You don't need to substitute any values, but it just helps out. Which ratio has the same unit as EMF? What is EMF? Work done per unit charge. So energy transferred per unit charge will have the same unit. Work done upon charge, energy upon charge. This is what EMF is. This is what potential difference is. That was question number 35. Moving on to question number 36. A circuit consists of a battery, a voltmeter, and 5 fixed resistors as shown. The voltmeter reading is 0. What is the resistance R? Acha, what I'll do is, for this one, I'll redraw the circuit. So this is my 2 ohms. This is my 5 ohms. Then this is my 8 ohms, 10 ohms. In fact, here we go, R 8, and then this is connected to my battery. So if I were to label this 2, 5, 8, R, and this is where the voltmeter is, and the voltmeter reading is 0. Now you need to understand that because the voltmeter reading is 0, the ratio of this and this should be equal to the ratio of this and this. ठीक है, ये 5 से 10 हो गया, तो ये भी 2 का क्या होना चाहिए, डबल होना चाहिए, 4 होना चाहिए. अगर ये रेशियो सेम नहीं होंगे तो पोटेंशियल ड्रॉप सेम नहीं होंगे. सही, पोटेंशियल ड्रॉप सेम नहीं होंगे तो यहां पर वोल्टेज का डिफरेंस सेम नहीं होगा, which means these two should be equal to 4. Now what value gives you 4? Obviously 8. ठीक है, when you have two identical resistor वो half हो जाते हैं, or you can work it out, 1/8 plus 1/R is equals to 1/4, and R is equals to 8. So the answer is D. Question number 37 says, a battery of EMF 6 volts and negligible internal resistance is connected to a voltmeter and 4 other components as shown. The voltmeter is connected between points X and Y. The positive terminal of the voltmeter is connected to X and the negative terminal of the voltmeter is connected to Y. Towards the end, Rumesa, Alisha. Initially, the resistance of each of the 4 components is 1 kilo ohms. So this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, and this is 1. So when all of these have 1, 1, 1, this voltmeter reading guaranteed will be 0. Okay? And this is linked similar to the previous question. This one experiences 3 volt, this one experiences 3 volt. This one experiences 3 volts, this one experiences 3 volts. So the potential here is equals to the potential here. Now, what do we want? We want a change that will cause the voltmeter to show a positive reading. Voltmeter showing a positive reading means that the voltage here should be greater than the voltage here. Voltage at X should be greater than the voltage at Y. The potential at X should be greater than the potential at Y. ये दो तरीकों से हो सकता है. क्या तरीका है कि हम या तो इस वाले की रेजिस्टेंस कम कर दे तो इस पे ड्रॉप भी क्या हो जाएगा, कम हो जाएगा, यहां पर ज्यादा वोल्टेज बाकी रह जाएगा. या हम क्या करें, हम इसकी रेजिस्टेंस बढ़ा दें. इसकी रेजिस्टेंस बढ़ाएंगे तो इधर ज्यादा ड्रॉप आ जाएगा, यहां पर कम रेजिस्टेंस, कम वोल्टेज रह जाएगा, कम पोटेंशियल रह जाएगा. सही. Initially it's 1 kilo ohm. That is what they've told us. Anas. Now let's go through each of these options. Decreasing the temperature of the thermistor. ठीक है. अब अगर मैंने थर्मिस्टर का टेम्परेचर कम किया, सही, डिक्रीजिंग द टेम्परेचर ऑफ द थर्मिस्टर, थर्मिस्टर का टेम्परेचर कम किया तो थर्मिस्टर की रेजिस्टेंस क्या होगी, बढ़ जाएगी. थर्मिस्टर की रेजिस्टेंस बढ़ जाएगी तो इसको ज्यादा वोल्टेज मिलेगा और इसको वोल्टेज जो है कम मिलेगा. उससे क्या होगा, वी वाई की वैल्यू बढ़ जाएगी, यहां पर ज्यादा वोल्टेज होगा. एंड दैट इज नॉट समथिंग दैट वी वांट. वी वांट वी एक्स टू बी ग्रेटर, वी वाई टू बी लेसर. सो ए इज इनकरेक्ट. Increase the resistance of the variable resistor. If I increase the resistance of the variable resistor, यहां पर ड्रॉप ज्यादा आ जाएगा. यहां ड्रॉप ज्यादा आएगा तो पोटेंशियल एट एक्स क्या हो जाएगा, कम हो जाएगा. And we don't want the potential at X to be less. We want the potential at X to be greater. So once again, this does not work. Reduce the intensity of light on the LDR. LDR की light intensity कम करेंगे, इसकी resistance क्या हो जाएगी, बढ़ जाएगी. When the resistance increases here, resistance increases, यहाँ पर जो voltage बाकी रह जाएगा VY पे, वो कम हो जाएगा. And that is exactly what we want. We want VY to be less than VX. So C is the correct answer. D says replace the fixed resistor with a 500 ohm resistor. So what they're saying is ये 1 किलो ओम है ना, इसको आप हाफ कर दो. इसको आप हाफ करोगे, उसको आप हाफ करोगे तो भी यहाँ पर ड्रॉप ज्यादा आ जाएगा, यहाँ ड्रॉप ज्यादा आ जाएगा, डिफीट्स द पर्पस. Are we supposed to remember the symbols for all of these electrical components? Yes. Okay, there's a list given in your syllabus of the electrical symbols. You need to remember that. So like in a question like this, they haven't told you which is a thermistor, which is a resistor, which is a variable resistor, which is an LDR. If you don't know that, you're in trouble. Option A says decrease the temperature of the thermistor. You decrease the temperature of the thermistor, the resistance increases. ठीक है, तो थर्मिस्टर का हमने टेम्परेचर कम किया, इसकी रेजिस्टेंस क्या हो जाएगी, बढ़ जाएगा. इसकी बढ़ जाएगी, इसको ज्यादा वोल्टेज मिलेगा, इसको कम वोल्टेज मिलेगा, तो वी वाई क्या होगा, बढ़ जाएगा. वी डोंट, नवीन, वी डोंट वांट वी वाई टू इंक्रीज. क्लियर? वी वांट इट टू डिक्रीज और वी वांट वी एक्स टू इंक्रीज. So that was question 37. 38 says an alpha particle passes close to a gold nucleus and is deflected through an angle greater than 90 degrees. Which property of the alpha particle changes? Charge? No. Nucleon number? No. Proton number? Definitely not. The momentum changes. Why does the momentum change? The momentum changes because the velocity changes. The direction changes. So the momentum changes. 39. A nucleus of uranium-238. So uranium-238 decays in stages by emitting alpha particle, alpha 42. I don't know how many alpha particles, but alpha particles and beta particles. I don't know how many. Plus it forms PB 206, 82. How many alpha particles and how many beta particles are emitted during this decay change? So we can easily figure out the alpha particles first, because the beta particles do not affect the nucleon number. Beta particles only affect the proton number. तो हम पहले nucleon number compare करेंगे तो हमें पता चल जाएगा. हमारे पास 238 से न्यूक्लियन नंबर कितना हो गया, 206 हो गया, which means that there was a decrease of 32. 32 का decrease का मतलब है कि if one alpha particle is 4, how many alpha particles is this? It's 8 alpha particles. So alpha particles 8. Then let's have a look at beta particles. Even though there's a trick here, they gave 2 options as 6. That means they wanted you to think 6, and hence A is the answer. But that does not work every time. As far as the beta particles are concerned, there are 16 protons. So 92 minus 16 protons plus X. So this causes an increase in proton number. Plus X is equals to 82. So X is equals to 92 minus 16, 76. 82 minus 76, which is equals to 6. So you have 6 beta particles. The answer has to be A. And the last question says, which list of particles contains only fundamental particles? Antineutrino, fundamental. Beta, fundamental. Meson, not a fundamental particle. Baryon, not a fundamental particle. Neutrino, positron, fundamental particles. Electron, fundamental. Neutrino, fundamental. Alpha, not a fundamental particle. Lepton, fundamental particle. Quark is a fundamental particle. Positron, which is a lepton, is a fundamental particle. So the answer in this case is D.